although it would be easier to work aircraft carriers in if I did it like that. I mean, a little simpler. Here. Oh. I'm sorry, what was the question?
You didn't understand.
Is magic ever going to come out of the closet? The dress first. Okay. Right here, because I said.
I was just wondering do you have any idea how many books there will be in the Dressing Series?
Total books in the Dresden File series, 20-ish of the case books. It could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less, depending on whether or not my kid goes to grad school. But then when I get done with the case books, then there'll be a big old apocalyptic trilogy as kind of a capstone thing.
More is better.
So, well, so you say, but if things go on past their expiration date, you wind up with things like the last season of X-Files, and that's just you've got that zombie show that's just sort of staggering on. Shouldn't you have died, a while ago? Possibly. Right over here. In the course of my series, during the process, what do I find gets most often left on the cutting room floor, as it were? I've got a pathological aversion to actually chopping stuff out once I've gotten it written. See above regarding lazy. The things that do get dropped out are mostly small bits and pieces. Pieces of conversation that really weren't relevant to what was going on. Descriptions that just kind of rambled on too long, and when I could have done it in like a word and a half, that kind of thing. Actually, there are actually entire chapters that got scrapped once in a while where I realized, oh wait a minute, I should have taken a left at Albuquerque, and instead, I got this chapter that's taking the book in completely the wrong direction, so I delete it and start over. I don't think I actually save very many of those, though. But mostly I look at them and go, oops, don't let anybody know they exist. They'll think you're cooler that way. Behind their sign. Oh my goodness, yeah, well done. I didn't even know she had her hand up. Please, go ahead. Secret to being so clear? I worked really, really hard to learn how to do it. I wrote for like 9 years before I ever sold anything for any money at all, and I've got half a dozen novels that are so awful I would not have made Osama bin Laden read them. Mostly the important thing as a writer that you have to learn is don't get too overcomplicated with your language if you're trying to make things clear. My belief as a writer is that if I'm doing my job right, the language should be transparent so that as the story's going, you don't even notice you're reading words. You're kind of creating your own virtual reality as you go along. I like to be a transparent writer. I don't like to do the wordplay thing, or at least not very often. Plus, I'm not very good at it, like Rothfuss. Rothfuss. Right over here in the beach. I mentioned my vicious attack dog. Is that sarcasm, or is he really a vicious attack dog? He is vicious. He is the most vicious 20 pounds of Bichon Frise you have ever seen. 20 pounds of killer white fluff. I never said he was dangerous. I said he was vicious. And indeed he is. On the other hand, he's also saved my kid from a bear. So he's worth it. I can tell a bear story. All right. At one point, we were living out in kind of the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. We were several minutes drive out there. We were about half an hour out of State College, a little bit further, kind of in Amish country. We lived in this long valley. It was like 22 miles long, and it was filled with, there was like 3 houses, and then Amish farms was the whole thing. Mountains and ridges all around, just gorgeous, but there was actual wildlife about. Anyway, we've got this little dog, and we make him sleep with the boy downstairs in his room, which is right off the kitchen. And we put the baby gate up, and Boy goes to bed, and we put the dog in bed with the boy, and they go to sleep, and it's adorable. One night, about 3 in the morning, the dog somehow manages to knock the baby gate over, climb up the stairs, which he'd never done before. He was a puppy, and then he came to the side of the bed, and he'd thrown a fit at me from the side of the bed. I'm like, what is wrong with you? You've become possessed, aren't you? That's what it is. And so I take the dog back downstairs, all sleepy and grumpy. Put him back in bed with the boy, and I find that the boy has kicked all the covers off, and he's just lying in bed shuddering like that. He's running like 101 fever. And you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, and take care of the kid and get him Tylenol and get him back to bed, and he goes back to sleep again. I'm like, good dog, that was awesome. You know, I picked him up, put him on the bed, he curled down next to the boy, went right to sleep. It's like, wow, okay, that's pretty cool. A couple weeks later, same thing happens. And I'm like, well, when is it last year? Did Timmy fall down the well again? And so I go downstairs, and the boy's fine. And I kind of stop and look at the dog, and I said, it's 2:30 in the morning. What do you think you're doing? He goes about, we have kind of this long, narrow house, and he goes down about 10 feet down the kitchen, and then stops and looks at me. And I'm like, what? I walk over to him, and he quiets down. I'm like, okay, that's a little bizarre. So then he goes another 10 feet, does the same thing, and another 10 feet, another 10 feet. We go all the way up and down the first floor of the house. And then we do it twice. And then after that, he curls up in a ball and goes to sleep. And I'm like, okay, you are officially crazy. I pick him up, I put him in bed, I go back to bed. The next morning I'm getting the kid up, I'm getting him off to school. And what you have to realize is that the main door to the house that we used was the kitchen door, and then immediately across from the kitchen door was the door to his room. Okay, and this was just like a glass door. I open the door because I'm going to walk the kid out to the bus stop. He was 9, you know, and I stop and look, and on the snow, on the steps leading up to the door, are bear prints about this big, paw prints. I kind of stop, and I look at those, and I look down, and I go outside, and the paw prints go all the way around the house twice. And I realized at that point that the dog had known the bear was out there. He came to get me, and then he made me pace the bear up and down the... so that the bear I knew he was there. After that, man, I looked at that dog and said, you are in. All right. But yeah, so whenever anybody gives me a hard time about having a little dog, you need to have a big dog like my German Shepherd. I'd be like, did German Shepherd ever save your kid from a bear? No. Well, that little dog did. Just step off. Black T-shirt right here.
Yeah. Are you still thinking about doing a Mr. Mouse Bob story?
It's been suggested to me. It might be fun. It would be kind of like the Dresden Files version of Beniculi. Which influenced me when I was small and impressionable, and I think it's probably got taken away by my teacher while I was there too. Right over here.
Have you read George Martin's Game of Thrones and the sequels? What do you think of them?
Have I read George Martin's Game of Thrones and the sequels, and what did I think of them? I read the first one probably many moons ago, right after it first came out. I read it and went, for fantasy, this is really low on fantasy. You kind of go through the whole thing, and you've got one person who doesn't get burned by fire and a zombie. And it's like, that's a little lower than the fantasy intake that I want. I could probably go back and read them again. I might think they're much better now. The Black Company books were like that for me. The first time I read them, I'm like, oh, whatever. And I went back 10 or 15 years later after I studied a lot of history and so on. I'm like, oh my gosh, these are brilliant. And it's just a matter of perspective, I think, where you are. Maybe I'll think Martin's brilliant the next time I go back. I like the series, though. I'm all about Tyrion Lannister on the series. Right here on the floor.
Well, speaking about the series, and I know you've already tried it with sci-fi, but with all these other book series going to HBO and all that, would you ever consider doing that, or maybe a movie?
Would I ever consider doing the Dresden Files for HBO or for a movie?
Kodak.
I shall think about it. I'm willing to forgive Hollywood for the first iteration of the Dresden Files and the Sorcerer's Apprentice. I'm just saying, if you take the covers of the comic book and the poster from Sorcerer's Apprentice and put them next to each other, that's all I'm saying. I think actually, if it had been anybody except Nick Cage, the one guy